Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the PolitiBabble podcast, where we're discussing whether there should be a global government. I'm Archibald Elliott, and as usual I'm joined by my wonderful co-host,
Oliver Sykes. Good afternoon, Archie.
Good afternoon indeed. Yes, so this week we're talking about should a global government exist? So this, I think, style of government. Oh, I must say we're back in studio this week. I'm out of COVID isolation. Yes.
You had to plug that one.
I had to plug that in.
Yes. Well, obviously, if you were watching last week's episode, you would have known we were over Zoom. So
and we had some loss of audio quality. Which
we did. My microphone was rather poor.
I think mine was worse on picking up in the end. I sat quite a distance from my laptop mic, which was not too good. Yes, but other than that, we're regularly taking our LFDs as they're short named, which is interesting. Have you been getting on with the COVID mitigation policies put in?
Well, I've been wearing my mask when I've been sort of in crowded, close areas, especially on the buses, which it is currently...
Becoming a faceless human being. What's you like, Oliver?
Mandated. And obviously you're in the studio today. If you might think that the camera quality is a bit bizarre or you're seeing a bit of a reflection, we've got these wonderful Perspex... Is it Perspex?
Perspex, yes.
Perspex screens.
Held up by...
Strimmer wire.
Strimmer wire. A very high tech.
It doesn't look like strimmer wire,
it's the new Max Radio Christmas decorations.
And if we are moving around the corridors, we will obviously have our face masks on. But for the moment, we are comfortably sitting further enough, and we obviously have the screens. So, and obviously we're speaking to you guys, and
that's more important.
That's more important.
Yes.
But yeah. So we're back, and things are a little bit different at the moment. But, we keep moving forward, and we'll see where this new variant takes us. Obviously,
Indeed.
We know it's spreadable, but whether it's actually more deadly or dangerous...
We'll discuss all of that in the current affairs section.
Yes, sorry, Archie.
But
I'm ruining the topic.
but yeah, we unfortunately can't have guests in studio at the moment. We're limited to 2 in the room. So we may look to get some Skyped in the future.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Should be rather interesting. But we move on to the question of this week: should a global government exist? I think Oliver and I are quite agreed on the subject, but for the point of this, I shall play devil's advocate to give a different perspective, as I like to do. So yes, a global government. Well, what would that constitute? Well, it would constitute the world being controlled by one single body, much like the UN would almost control the world, and we all have voting power within it, but it would be controlled by a single entity. And I think the arguments mainly for having a global government would increase maybe trade. It would look at freedom of movement, a greater distribution of resources. We could fix world problems better. We could deal with pandemics better, for example. Yeah. Those are all the arguments for. And it has been proposed by some conspiracy theorists so that's what COVID is a ploy for. It's a ploy to create this idea of a world government.
Yes, I remember someone telling me something similar to that. They describe it as a new world order, don't they? As a form of totalitarianism and this authoritarian government spanning across the world, which I don't see necessarily it happening. And I don't see necessarily that if it were to happen, it would be a good thing. I think the way in which we have individual control over, there's individual governments and head of states, and I think it brings individuality to the world. And I just don't think the world would be as great a place with having one singular government. And like you say, there are pluses and minuses for it, but at the moment I'm sitting with it, staying the way we are.
What would you say the main disadvantage of having a world government would be?
Well, that is a difficult one, but I suppose it would be quite difficult to manage in a way. A large government, they always say that they are difficult to manage. Everywhere has different sort of ways of doing things, different countries, regions, and some laws and regulations would not be suitable for potentially other areas. So it would probably have a cross conflict between the two. But do you have any suggestions for what would be disadvantages?
Do- di-
Because I'm trying to think of it.
Well, disadvantages is probably the amount of bureaucracy
Yeah,
needed, but
the red tape.
the idea behind a world government has, I think we would have a person to put in place as our head of the world government, because after all, we have one person who was described in childhood as their ambition for their life was to be world king, and that person is obviously Alexander Boris the Pfeffel Johnson, and that was his ambition as far as I think we would have a set leader for our idea of a world government.
Well,
But
he would not. No, he'd not be the most suitable at all. I mean,
He'd be funny.
He can't. Yeah, he'd be funny, but would he do a good job?
oh yes, but anyway, the idea
That's a different story in
the
itself.
idea of a world government has really been around, I think, since the dawn of history, almost in the Bronze Age. We had the Egyptian kings wanted to rule all that the sun encircles. We see the Mesopotamian kings all from the sunrise to sunset, and you looked at the ancient Chinese and Japanese emperors, and their names for their emperors referred to as emperors all under heaven. So kind of these four civilizations were kind of the initial point of having big cultures, and I think the Daying Tong, as the Chinese put it, and in the Han Dynasty of China, we saw the altar of a greater unity, always put as religious aspect of it. So this idea of having this collectivism has actually been around for a very long time. I think even if we look at examples like, for example, the Roman Empire for the Mediterranean world, that was a very large achievement. That was, again, most of the known world was enveloped by a single government, the Roman Empire. So would you not say it does have a possibility of being achieved and run well, Oliver?
Yes, yeah, I suppose so. I suppose there's a big argument for the likes of poverty and tackling that through having, one government. But I suppose it would sort of be a bit damaging towards sort of, I'm trying to say, like, sort of democracy in a way. With having one singular government, there would be an issue with perhaps variation in sort of, I don't know, the types of governments we've got. It would probably be very similar all the time, and I suppose politics wouldn't be that interesting in a way. The great thing about politics is we have so many, it's all based on decision making, and so many different countries have such different ways of doing things, and it's that what makes politics interesting is looking at comparing other countries and different jurisdictions in what they're doing, and I suppose having one singular.
Well,
would not.
I must say we
it
are
fun.
being interrupted by some Christmas music that's playing in from the other studio. It's quite entertaining. I think they're playing.
Not only that, you can tell he did the music. Do you remember?
There we are. I brought up the studio one, so we know what on earth is going on. Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone. That was the. It is now December, so it is acceptable for Christmas music to start. But going back to your proposal of looking at different politics around the world, would you not argue that it creates a better form of politics because by creating a democratic world government, we remove regimes which are very, very oppressive?
Yeah, you do make a fair point there, and I suppose it's that idea of getting stuff done. Would probably be more. It would be more useful in having one singular government across the world, because we wouldn't be looking at other countries all the time and saying, "Oh, why are we always falling behind on this? Why aren't we doing that?" If there's one sort of government, it would probably get things done easier. In a way.
But after all, we all know we are already ruled by one singular government of those who live inside the centre of our Earth, the lizards, as some like to say. That is, again, another conspiracy theory, that we are all controlled by a larger organisation of secret lizards. Or even if we look at the Illuminati as another example, or the Knights Templar, we see these ideas, and there's always been this notion that most of the world is controlled by this set of figures or this group. So there's already this idea in culture, popular culture, that we do already have a form or a style of world government, wouldn't you say?
Well, You could
Or
say
are
that.
you-
I've not seen these
but-
conspiracy theories, so I'm not.
Do you agree with the fact that we are controlled by lizards, for example?
No,
Like the Queen is a
I
lizard.
say I'm not informed at all by these conspiracy theories, and I do not believe them in any way, shape, or form, because I don't believe that we're controlled by lizards.
Oliver's obviously a lizard here, trying to disguise the fact that he is a lizard. As of course, that's what all lizards would say, wouldn't they, Oliver? But if you look at, have you read 1984?
Well, it was part of my English literature at
So you-
GCSE, so I have read most of it. Yes.
Excellent. We can discuss that is a perfect example of a world government. They were always at war with either Eurasia or Oceania. But again, did those states actually exist was a key question being posed, and was really Big Brother the single entity that ruled the earth? And it was kind of that point there was just either three major players or it was really just one, and it was coercion to make them believe there was more than three players. And we had quite effectively run.
Well, in that circumstance, I would much prefer to be a prole, because I wouldn't have to face the oppressive regime of Big Brother, and I could live on the
An inner circle,
yeah.
circle party member. We look at what Orwell was a great wise, but the inner circle party, they had really much control. Was there really a Big Brother? That's sort of the stuff we get into. If we have a world government, who's it really run by? Is it run really democratically?
Are there telescreens in here?
Are there telescreens in here? Are we being watched? Yeah, exactly. We see this idea that mainly a world government would be generally totalitarian, because there isn't the ability to go and question everyone, because it all works as one cohesive body. Do you think that runs at risk of a world government?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Do you think that totalitarianism will find its way and kind of overpower democracy if we introduce a form of world government?
Yes, I do believe that, and that's why I mentioned before that I feel as though it would affect democracy, and it's that sort of way of brainwashing people kind of into a belief, and I completely agree with that idea.
Well, I think we see. I'll draw on to I think World War II as an example in a minute.
Alright.
We look at I think Lionel George Curtis, who is a British official and author. He was advocating for British Empire federalism to kind of look, and later in life then a world state kind of created by the British Empire, and that's something which some people I know and it's an interesting scenario. If the British Empire was really to form as a collective body, it was almost a world government, or at least a third of the world government. And if that was expanded, were we seeing the early stages of world government? Obviously, that was collapsed. So I think the argument there is posed, is a world government actually feasible? Because we saw the empires, and large empires are very, very much in parallel with a world government. And we saw the British Empire collapse. Do you think large empires are still sustainable in that manner? Anymore.
Not particularly, no.
Why? I always ask the hard questions.
You do always ask the hard questions. It's like as if it's a big BBC News Night interview here.
This is Panorama with Archie Ward. Tonight we're questioning on what is Oliver thinking? We need an answer here, come on, Oliver. Why do you think large empires aren't sustainable?
I'm not entirely sure on this one, really. But I'm not entirely sure. I just believe that they're not sustainable.
Would you want? But if you could have a world empire, would you have a world empire?
No.
Let's say you could lead a world empire. Would you have a world empire?
No.
Why?
I wouldn't want to lead. I wouldn't want to want to be a leader.
Interesting.
He is asking hard questions, guys. It's really put me under pressure. Why
well,
do I
at
want?
home, what do you think? Yeah. Write into us at PolitiBabble or email us at politibabble@gmail.com. What do you think? Would you support a world government and kind of have that ruling our planet? Maybe we should institute a PolitiBabble world government. I think that would run rather well. But yes, we could look at the example of World War II and the Nazi Party in Germany. A terrible regime. It was very, very much totalitarianism, and the Third Reich almost that wanting to almost create a united world really under the regime of Adolf Hitler. and we even see in the man High Castle. That's a parallel history painted in a book originally, and now it's on Amazon Prime as a TV series. But that's looking at as if Germany did win the war, and we saw that almost form a world government. There were only two parallel states left. We saw the Third Reich and the Fourth Reich almost, and then the Asian states all united under the Japanese Empire. So you kind of had those two parallels, and then it started to fight. So we really did see this world view and kind of the eight corners of the world, as the Japanese Empire puts, of the eight corners of the world under one roof. And this was an idea behind to establish kind of a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, which is quite the mouthful. So we have seen these attempts to form a world government. They've always failed. But going back to COVID, well, COVID has reduced many restrictions on our lives. I'm sure you'll agree, Oliver, with me.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been affected by these restrictions. We've seen different governments collaborate to close our borders. And is it, do you think, a conspiracy to put us all under one regime? Or have us all conform or be totalitarianism, as they're now doing in Germany by mandating people to get the vaccine?
Well, it's, you make a fair point there on your spree of difficult questions, but no, I don't believe it's in order to sort of form this totalitarianism. I believe they've put in these restrictions, and not all governments are going under a similar way. I believe it's mainly to protect the public health of the people of the country. And in different ways and in different countries, they've had to tackle it in different ways. And putting in stricter measures is the only way in which we've combated this. The Isle of Man we've had, compared to many countries, we've been able to enjoy a great period of time without facing restrictions. And restrictions haven't been put in place for no particular reason. There's usually reasonings behind that, and if they were to, they've been rather late in some circumstances in putting in those restrictions. So I don't.
So would a world government be better then? Because a world government can introduce those restrictions and it's cohesive. It can lock down the places where it's most deadly, like Australia's done with cities like Melbourne, for example. They locked it down when they had cases. A world government. Well, I think we can draw an example. I'm not sure how much you know about the UN. As an institution, but the UN is almost a form of global government now. It doesn't have massive power and doesn't have power over individual sovereign states, but it does have that almost unity body behind it, and that would be a model, I suppose, where a united government could be built upon. We even look at the EU, for an example, where it's heavily bureaucratic. It is trying in certain cases to impose more power over member states in issues like tax. We see that especially in the case of Ireland, where Ireland has a very low rate of corporation tax, and that was done to encourage business to go to the country. And then the EU was like, sorry, Ireland, we're going to fine your companies which came over because they should be paying more tax, because Ireland saw the massive economic benefits of controlling its own tax system and its own sovereignty. So again, we see this idea of the EU being this almost bureaucratic institution. So it does have a model where it could be expanded and include more states. So would an EU style of government be beneficial? We're now moving to the Brexit debates. Oliver's face fell then. It dropped as he realised we're using the B word, and yes, we're pressing for answers. Because could the EU be expanded, or is it a sustainable model to use on a larger scale?
I'd say the way it is at the moment, obviously. Do I think there's a different topic, really? Do I think the UK was in the right way to leave the EU or not? But I think the model that it has at the moment is perfectly fine. I don't think it should be expanded because I feel as though it
should be shrunk then.
Not necessarily. I believe in own countries making their own decisions and being not dictated to by you. This is where I'm coming in with the last question about what was the last question I couldn't answer. I don't. But I believe that countries should be there to make their own decisions and not be dictated to by unions or groups of.
So self-determination.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
as Woodrow Wilson liked to put.
Yes.
Did you do IGCSE
I did.
history?
I did do
You
IGCSE
did, yes.
history. Yes.
Then we both know the joys of the League of Nations.
Yes,
with
the big
Cambridge.
three. The big
The big
three.
three. Yes. Who were the big three?
Yeah. David Lloyd George, Woodrow Wilson, and Clemenceau.
Very good. Very
Yes, top
good.
points.
Still in the knowledge there.
I'm sure my
yes.
IGCSE history teacher would be absolutely fantastic to hear that.
Yes, we do love Cambridge exam board with their
We do.
fascinating topics. And actually, I think if you took A level, IA level with Cambridge for history, they cover a lot of the same topics in certain parts. It's quite a bit boring. But yes, going back to that, if you look at self-determination, arguably that's exactly what the EU doesn't do. Because it dictates to member states what they can and can't
which
do.
I don't like at all.
Interesting.
Don't like it.
Interesting. Well, interesting. Do write into us. We forgot to put a poll this week. Should we have a global government? We are slacking in this.
Yeah,
regard,
the
so we
social
do
media
apologise.
person's got to go.
It got to go. We've got to get a sack. We got to deal with them later. Have some disciplinary action. Get the HR meeting in, and really, hold an inquiry as to why we haven't had much social media interaction. But we endeavour to do the best as we can on PolitiBabble. But in this case, COVID has reduced our working hours. It's reduced our lives, and COVID impact, like they do on FOIs, COVID has such a big bureaucratic impact that we couldn't possibly do any sort of social media engagement. So do write into us instead if you've enjoyed this episode, or comment below.
Yes.
Do you think there should be a world government? I'm going to say no, there shouldn't, because as Oliver's made an excellent
Archie.
point.
You're not going for the authoritarian move.
No.
I'm glad.
As Oliver made the excellent point, we should have determination for different countries to make their own decisions and not be dictated to. So what do you think, Oliver? Are you going to go out with a zinger and go the opposite way? Or not?
No, I'm going to stick to my word, and yes.
Stick to your guns, as they would say probably in America, which is yes.
Stick to your guns.
They have very liberal gun laws, which is in some certain states.
They love the right to bear arms.
Yes, and pop off
Yes.
rounds. But yes, that does move us nicely on to this week's. Just pause here. Forgive me. Forgive me. Peppa Pig. But the news. Yes.
Well, the Isle of Man's local current affairs. Well, it's been a bit of a hefty week with COVID again. Sorry, guys, but face coverings have been made mandatory on public transport, which means that the Isle of Man has moved to alert level 2 due to the new COVID variant, which is the Omicron variant. The NSC water slides are back open again. Very much a great bit of news there. As well as that, South Africans unable to fly to the Isle of Man for Christmas, sticking with the COVID theme, and MHK claims that 17 members of staff have been absent from CRHS. We'll try go for a non-COVID topic here, which is that the Liverpool ferry terminal has risen to £770 million, even though it's not even been hardly built at all at the moment. I've probably succumbed.
Yeah, but what interesting with the ferry?
Oh, well, have I missed the music?
No. Our ferry. I think that should be our first point of call, because in 2016 it was announced the ferry terminal would cost a grand total of 3.6 million in 2016.
Yeah.
Then it went up to 36 million.
Yeah.
A 10 times increase, and now it's doubled again, a 20 times increase to 70 million overall. It's ridiculous.
I mean, they've mainly said it's due to basically not being able to put a shovel in the ground because of COVID and social distancing and all these
how on
measures.
Earth does not putting a shovel in the ground cost 32 million?
I know.
Not building costs money.
Yeah.
Imagine what building costs. Imagine what building costs if not building.
It is.
And we're not even putting it in the best location. They're moving it slightly different location, aren't they, downstream?
Yes, they are moving it away from sort of the central point that we currently have, but the facilities that are there are not fit for purpose. It's not really comforting for the passenger. Have you never been to?
I have, and it seems to do the job.
It does the job, but it's
exactly, it does the job, and it doesn't cost £70 million after we had a deficit of 200 million last year.
I take it. I don't think we own really what we've got at the moment. I take it we like lease that out or whatever.
It's a long-term lease from memory.
Yeah. So there would be we make no money from, it's not like we own it, so we'd make no money from leaving the site. I'm sure it'll just be a cruise liner that goes in our place.
Yeah, I personally just can't see the argument at all. But yeah, it's again giant government expense where it did shock everyone. When
I mean, there was an interview last month on a fellow sort of broadcasting medium, which was Isle of Man TV with Paul Malton, and it was the first sit down with the minister Tim Crookall, and he said, and Paul asked about the new landing stage, the ferry terminal, and he said, "Oh well, there'll be news soon." And he said, "Well, is it going to be an increase, a decrease?" And he was like, "Well, you'll have to wait." And it's clearly not good news with 70 million rise. I mean, who's going to vote for it? That's the end of the day. They'll be voting on it. Indeed, but Isle of Man moving to alert level 2, I think it's a sensible thing to do.
Alert level 2 to me makes no sense because alert level 2 isn't very different from alert level 1, except they say we expect these things rather than strongly recommend. There's still no legal mandate for it.
Mm-hmm. But there are some legal measures.
But they're not necessarily related to level 2. Level 2 didn't have any legal measures. They're just separate mitigations because of the Omicron variant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, the government communication department is slightly questionable at times. So it's probably good they have a level 2, just so they have more steps and bureaucracy to follow. But I mean, we have, I think, overreacted to the Omicron variant.
I believe we haven't.
We haven't. The South African doctor who discovered the Omicron variant, and most of that part of the world has said it's absolutely ridiculous the lengths the UK has gone to. They're far, far overreacted from what they've seen. They put undue restrictions on countries like South Africa when it was merely discovered there. For all we know, it could have come from elsewhere in the world.
Well, I believe we should be precautious in our way with this. It was one of the other variants, wasn't it? And it began to sort of affect us quite badly because we didn't take it very seriously, and I suppose.
But are we supposed to lock down or introduce or introduce new measures every single time a new variant occurs every year?
Well, Theresa May. All right, Theresa May. You make a.
I've not won through any fields of wheat today, Oliver, so you can't call me that.
You do make a similar point to what she was making in Parliament the other day, but yes. No, you are right in a way, but we were alerted to this variant which could have cause for concern, and we need to be sensible in the way we're approaching this. We're coming to winter time where if this virus is going to leak, it could put potential.
Well, it's already in the community, and it's other variants. We see, we look at Glaxo and the WHO. They found that the vaccines seem to be effective against the new variants. We see scientists around the world really reiterating there's no evidence that it's more deadly than previous strains. We see Angelique Cortez, the chair of the South African Medical Association, saying that currently there's no reason for panicking. We still don't see severely ill patients.
At the moment, you say. Anyway, there's significant school absence occurring at the moment due to COVID-19 or other winter illnesses or viruses. Are there enough mitigations put in place in schools to prevent this loss of learning for some people?
Well, the only mitigation which you would do is remove everyone from the building. If you remove people, you don't have the problem of transmission. I don't think there's a need to add even more mitigations. What else are we going to add, mitigation-wise, in schools?
Well, potentially enforcing legally the wearing of face coverings. Secondly. You're looking at me.
Where else? Yeah. Where else would you go from that?
Well, social distancing could be.
How would you social distance in schools? We look at for example, in the state schools.
It's
like
I know.
Balcony, for example, they are oversubscribed,
Yeah.
according to statistics, by about 400 to 600 pupils.
Yeah, that is
You
entirely
can't
true.
physically.
But in some
social
in some
distance.
schools, if they weren't all overpopulated,
But they are overpopulated.
yeah,
We look at the situation it is. Oliver, if we didn't have COVID, we could do many things. We look at the situation it is. I don't think we could social distance in any of the schools. None of the schools on Ireland could do it without sending home pupils.
yeah. Well, some primary schools potentially could, and I didn't. We were
Some primary
and
schools.
Order. I did not describe.
out
I
of this.
said COVID-related school absences.
And what are they
I
mainly
did
in?
not describe.
Are they mainly in primary schools or are they mainly in secondary schools? Currently, the measures we see
Are mainly in secondary
only
schools,
secondary
but I did not describe them as completely secondary school mitigations. We've seen our likes of our.
I don't think primary schools could social distance either.
Why?
Children are hard to control. At
Yes,
that
yeah,
age.
okay.
And they're oversubscribed again.
So what have they done? Well, the likes of our former primary school, they decided to open the windows a little bit more and tell the kids to put on some more clothes.
And as we know, open the windows a little bit more when you have 31 kids, or 30 kids, or 20 kids, or even 15 kids in a classroom. You could go less than that, and you still run high risk because they're all next to each other.
Yeah. I mean, it is difficult. I'm just trying to see if there were any points you could. I was looking for a bit of tension there, but yes.
Yeah, we got it. But I think yes, it's. We have to learn to live
Are the
with
schools? Are the schools putting it? Are the schools practicing the? That's another way I could put into it. Are the schools practicing the mitigations that we've already got in place enough?
I don't know because I've not actually been in school for the past about 12 days.
Yes.
Because I had COVID.
Yeah, I believe not really, but
But that's the point. We can't. It's incredibly hard to mandate masks on school children. How are we going to mandate it? Are they all going to be sent home? Because then you'll have the truants who will purposely not wear masks.
I mean,
sent.
at the end
Are
of
we
the
gonna
day, I
fine
don't
them?
actually confine myself in confined.
Yeah.
I don't get myself in confined spaces really.
Same
So
here.
I wear a mask if I'm in a large gathering. So I was in an assembly the other day. There was probably about nearly 200 people in there. I wore a mask.
Well, it's just helpful because you can put snacks inside the mask and eat through the assembly. So it really is quite helpful. It's like you can be like a horse in that regard. But looking at it and what schools are doing, you couldn't really mandate students to wear them. How would you mandate it? You can't. And even if we look at mandating on public transport, we look at the exemption policy. The exemption policy, you don't have to prove you're exempt. You don't have to show written evidence you're exempt. You
so
don't
I
have
was
to
on
verbal
a-
evidence you're exempt. You just say, I am exempt, and that is enough for you to be exempt. And I think that's quite
well,
ridiculous.
I was on a double-decker bus the other day going on a commute, and there were two people on the front of the bus who maybe they do have a medical reason why they're not wearing a mask, but they weren't wearing a mask, and everyone else was. And the bus driver, funny enough, I was looking for my mask. I did have a mask in my bag, but I got to the bus stop and it was the second day of the mandating of masks, and I was, oh gosh, I need to put my mask on anyway. Searching for it as the bus was there, and he said, oh, here's a mask. He passed me one. They had a box or whatever on the bus, but clearly those people above, at the front of the bus were not wanting to wear masks or whatever. And just because you get on the bus, it means wearing it for the duration of the bus ride. It doesn't mean getting on in front of the bus driver and then taking it off. Come on. That's the whole point, is actually when you're all sat down, you're all in the space, is wearing them anyway.
We all know what Oliver does on the bus.
The most important thing is to hands, face, space, and LFD.
And what does LFD stand for, Oliver?
It stands for lateral flow device, Archie. And that is a way that you can test yourself for COVID-19, and it does have an 80% chance of...
I thought it was a transportation acronym. It stands for last free day.
Well, there's usually lots of acronyms for.
Let me find some interesting ones. Or we have late for dinner. We have the Londonderry Fire Department. We have the Little Fools Dance in America. We have the local file disclosure. We have Left for Dead. We have lactose-free diet. We have a licensed funeral director. We have looking for duo. Level field density.
The list goes on.
Level frequency drift. Lakeland Fire Departments. low flyer detection, left for the day. Low fat diet. We have so many, or load from disc. There's so many different acronyms. But yeah, the lateral flow tests. Are you doing your lateral flow test, Oliver? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yes.
There's only one correct answer.
Yes, I am, and I have been.
Yes.
If I've been feeling over the past week, if I've felt slightly unwell at all, sometimes you wake up and you feel, well, don't feel too good today. I'll take a lateral flow.
Just because if you get a lateral flow test and you're positive, you get 10 days of holiday. It is excellent, I must say. That is obviously satire there, but yeah, you do.
Is it now?
Just positive. Yeah, there's it off. There's me booked off for the next 10 days. What a shame. But it is pretty awful with COVID. I still can't smell at all.
Oh, it's pretty awful, is it now?
Yeah, I can't smell. It's quite. Yeah. It's entertaining. Because my mother has been, was at least when I couldn't taste either, was putting a wide variety of of spices and flavours in my food, and I just only start hearing about them now. What she put in my food, I had no idea. Apparently, there was so many garlic cloves in it, and she was really surprised I couldn't taste. There's another one where she put, I think, like garam masala. I had no idea, or fennel is lovely. I love it. Usually, I couldn't taste it though. Or fennel was another one that was really, really aniseedy. It was hilarious. There was a day where I was eating an almond croissant, and it felt like a marshmallow, which was tasteless. Because it's a lovely, airy, lovely croissant, usually.
Was it a Noah's?
Yes, it was indeed.
Other bakeries are available.
Aren't available. But I couldn't taste it, which was such a shame.
I tell you what, I had was it a week ago? I don't know. Have you ever had anything from Ross Bakery? Oh, lovely stuff. They're hot cross buns.
No, I prefer...
not hot cross buns, they're tea cakes. Very similar things, but are incredible.
Only thing I'd buy from there is their Portuguese egg custard tarts.
And their challah buns. Oh.
So I'm a Noah's fan here. We're opposing ends of the Isle of Man bakery.
Where I work, they are their supplier for some... They do get Noah's stuff, they do get their sourdough, but... they get some of the Ross Bakery stuff. So big shout out to where I work is Braddock Glen Cafe Restaurant.
We don't endorse.
Rooms.
We don't endorse. I don't work, so I can't shout out anywhere. Yeah. I work at PolitiBabble. There we are, endorsing PolitiBabble podcast.
Director of PolitiBabble, Archibald Elliott.
Yes. CEO, chairman of the board,
co-founder.
Yes, chairman of the board and health and safety executive. Because obviously at PolitiBabble we have to take under many, many different roles under that, and it is really arduous. So if you are feeling kind, do send in a Christmas gift to our PayPal. No, I'm only joking. Though we don't actually have any. We're not soliciting.
We may have a Christmas special coming up in a few weeks.
We may do.
We may be getting festive.
We may not. We may do. It depends if COVID cancels this all.
We may have some highlights from the year, or
indeed.
we save that to our maybe another special, our end of year special.
It all depends if Boris cancels Christmas again,
or Alfred.
Or Alfred, indeed. Yes.
Well, I believe Alfred's actually in London at the moment.
See, Alf sounds like Elf to a degree, so maybe we shall have Christmas online.
Did you see the Jeff the Mongoose customised jumpers? Or if you go on Hooli.im now, Archie, search up Hooli.im.
Do you work for them, Hooli.im, by any chance?
No, Archie, no.
It's questionable here. It's questionable.
Anyway, Alf's actually with Michael Gove, or he was yesterday in London.
I've not noticed Hooli before. Jeff Collection. Yes. Alf. Yes. See, they copied my idea. I say they stole it from me just now, as I just thought of it for the first time. Yes. No. Very, very good. Yes. Very entertaining.
Comes in at a lovely £28.
No, but it depends what it's made out of. Depends if I think it's worth the price. But it doesn't say what it's made out of.
It's made out of eco-friendly plastic, Archie.
Is it? Do you know?
No, I was just spouting that to see whether you'd tax included.
Yeah, tax. Awful thing this is. Yeah, I have no idea. But yes, that if we go on to the international news desk for a minute, which should be rather interesting. Well, we see that Germany is on the move to mandate vaccines and ban the unvaccinated from entering bars and other events. We see Austria has locked down the unvaccinated, and Greece has mandated the vaccine for all those over 60 years of age. And over 60 years of age will now be required to pay the Greek government €100 every month that you aren't vaccinated for an indefinite period of time. We see other countries of Europe moving to the same rate of COVID vaccination mandation, and we see the rise of the Omicron variant sounding very, very much like an evil enterprise that is rising across the world, even though it's not necessarily as deadly as we think. And then we also see Boris introducing new not lockdown plans, but COVID mitigations, which have come across the UK and also the Isle of Man over the past few weeks, although they are separate jurisdictions. And then we see, again, we saw a record number of migrants cross the channel last week, which was rather shocking, and posing questions about Britain's immigration policy. And also we see the WTA ban all tournaments in China for the time to come. So that's all coming up on our PolitiBabble international news. So I think
But the Isle of Man news is more superior.
No, far not. But yes, we see Greece with their mandating of over 60s, and they're going to fine £100 €100 a month. Monthly intervals from mid-January, they're now mandating those who aren't double jabbed. So what do we think of this, Oliver?
Well, I believe that people have the choice to get a vaccination, and if they do not want to get one, then I believe that they are entitled to do that. But I feel as though that they should be informed in the reasons why getting a vaccine is helping the fight against coronavirus. So, you know, it is up to them, but I do believe that people should really have a reason to why they don't, and it is, you know, is someone.
So they shouldn't be mandated, or they should be.
I don't think they should be mandated, no, but I do think that the government should provide enough publicity and PR into why people should have the vaccine.
Well, we see Syriza, which is Greece's main opposition party, they call the measures very punitive and financially excessive. And we even look at the population. About 63% of the 11 million population of Greece is fully vaccinated, but about 500,000 of those over 60 are yet to get a single jab. So they must book their first jab by January 16th. And then it hasn't been put to a parliamentary vote, so we could see it stopped depending what happens. We see Austria also has announced compulsory COVID vaccinations will start in February. Again, we're seeing swathe across Europe, so I'm surprised the EU hasn't introduced a mandate yet requiring all EU citizens to get a jab. So we may unfortunately see that in the future. We also look at, I think, Germany going to ban the unvaccinated people from shops and bars. What do you think of that?
Well, at the end of the day, people should be getting their vaccination. I sound like a politician here, but if people want to
be getting vaccinated, they want to get a vaccination, but they don't want to get a vaccination. They shouldn't get a vaccination, but they should get a vaccination. Yeah, it's going around in circles here.
I mean, people should be allowed their freedoms, and not being able to go to the shops and other such basic requirements that people need to undertake. I feel that's quite petty in a way. I suppose. Can we have a large amount of unvaccinated people congregating in one area, for example, concerts or other such things? Maybe that's a bit of a different debate. But for places, for example, shops and things, then I think that unvaccinated people should be allowed to go there. Your thoughts are?
I think it's being it is very dangerous to say should we allow unvaccinated people to. I think it's a dangerous precedent to set. Should we allow a certain type of person, i.e., unvaccinated people? We should now stop them from meeting together. It's almost it is imposing a two-tier level of society, which is massively dangerous. And I think it is not. I think, a good scenario for the world.
No.
Because vaccines, after all, people with vaccines can still get COVID. They can transmit COVID. It should be up to
reduces the hospitalisation.
Personal choice, I'd say.
Well done.
Yes.
I agree with you there.
Did you
Actually,
see?
you make some sensible suggestions.
Unlike usual. But did we see the Did you see the WTA? The WTA cancelling their tournaments in China.
WTA. What does
Well, the World Tennis Association.
that? I think I did. Yes, I did hear about that.
Yes, but women's, this one, not the World Tennis, the Women's Tennis Association. They boycotted China in response to the treatment of Peng Shui. I'm hoping I pronounced the name wrong. My Chinese pronunciation, bar older Chinese names from about the 1900s to about 1980 are a bit dodgy, mainly because I had to study them in history. But they're suspending all tournaments in China in response to the continued questioning over Peng's condition, which is interesting. I think it is definitely a way to boycott and put pressure on the Chinese state to deal with allegations seriously. And then we also saw about the migrant crisis crossing the channel last week. I think we had a record number of migrants cross the channel, and Macron getting annoyed at how Britain was putting pressure on France to deal with the problem.
There's been a bit of tension there, hasn't there, of recently, especially to do with all the fishing post-Brexit stuff.
We love Brexit. And we again, unlike COVID, we don't mention Brexit every week. So
We don't. We go
don't.
long periods of time without
yes.
talking about Brexit,
And
which I
obviously,
quite
yeah.
enjoy.
Oh, you enjoy, right? A note to self: make sure we put Brexit back on the agenda. But yes, I think that does cover most of our affairs. I'm not sure why the music's now started playing again. But yeah, we're having a Christmas special in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, I hope to devise some
plan for that.
fun and engaging things for our
Are we not
listeners.
usually fun
we
and
are,
engaging?
We are fun and engaging, but Christmassy fun. Not even Christmassy. It doesn't even need to be. Well, it doesn't need to be Christmassy in some ways, but having some sort of fun to our Christmas agenda,
Yes.
and some maybe another special towards the end of the year as an end of year celebration.
Well, that does conclude this week's episode of the PolitiBabble podcast. We'll be back next week at a similar time to discuss a topic that matters greatly to you. And this is as usual, and as is being absolutely serious there, you can check out our previous podcasts at maxradio.com maxradio.com/podcast/PolitiBabble or on your favourite podcast provider. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me. You've been PolitiBabbled. Thank you.
Ta-ta.